I think someone needs to give this guy a hand. An example of what you shouldn't do. This is my story. It may be a little messy and unorganized, but I wanted to share it. I'm still going through it, but things seem to be going well and I have learned a lot through the experience so far. I am 25 years old. My wife and I got married almost 4 years ago and had been friends for about 2 years before getting married. About 3 months into our marriage, we got pregnant, which wasn't part of the plan. We are both Christians, which I think has been an important factor in our recovery. D-Day was October 29th. I found out because a brother-in-law had heard through the grapevine that my wife was seen alone with a guy at an ice skating rink. When he told me this, I asked my wife about it later that night, expecting that there was some sort of misunderstanding or some explanation. What followed was like getting punched in the stomach. She explained that the ice skating was supposed to be a group thing, but when she got there it was just the guy, etc. The troubling part was that I could tell she wasn't telling me everything. I began asking her more questions like should I be concerned about other guys. When her response was silence and no eye contact, I felt myself beginning to get sick. After a few moments, I popped the big question, are you sleeping with someone else? I felt stupid for even asking. Again, silence. I began grieving in an intense way that was more like shrieking than crying. After several minutes, I began asking her more questions. I really wanted to know how long, how many times, with whom. At first, she wouldn't answer any of my questions. She sat there in almost complete, cold silence. Then she began telling me that she didn't love me. In fact, she never did, and further that I never loved her. Perhaps the worst part, she told me she loved the OM. I honestly can't remember all the details of that night. But that was the general tone. I said several expletives, but never called her any names. I told her I needed space, and left. As soon as I went outside, I began to worry she would hurt herself and didn't feel good about leaving her like that. I decided to go back inside and tell her how I felt. When I went back inside, I told her that I was really hurt, but that I still loved her and wanted to make it work. I tried to give her a hug which sent her into a crying fit. She pushed me away, telling me stop loving me. We sat mostly silent for a few moments, and I told her again that I wanted to work it out. But I needed some space for the night. With that, I left. I stayed with my parents that night and hardly slept at all. My parents also watched my son for the next 2 weeks while we started working on things. The next morning, I went back home early to find that my wife wasn't home. I wasn't entirely surprised. She needed to be comforted, so she stayed with the only person that would comfort her. The OM. I called her. She didn't answer, but called me back very quickly. I told her I wanted to talk and asked if she would come home, which she did. As I sat there waiting for her, I did a few household projects I had been meaning to do. I couldn't take the stillness of doing nothing. I thought about what I would say when she got back. I had it planned. I heard her car pull into the driveway and went outside to greet her. When I saw her, an overwhelming compassion for her came over me. Everything I had planned on saying, everything I had been feeling melted away, and all I could do was embrace her. I felt like the father in the parable of the prodigal son, with some obvious differences. We went out for coffee and started discussing what had happened. Her attitude was a lot different than it had been the previous night. She was a lot more open about everything. Now, it's been a little over 5 weeks since I found out at the time of writing this. I don't remember every detail of what happened, and it seems like it'd been a lot longer. Every day has felt like a week. I will try to condense everything into the most important parts. The first week was the hardest on me. I literally lost nearly 10 pounds and over an inch in my waistline in that first week. I spent every possible moment with her when I wasn't at work, and spent every waking moment thinking about everything and planning how I should feel and what I should do. We started by discussing what had happened and how she felt. She basically felt like she never loved me, married me out of infatuation, and was unhappy because of our marriage. She felt like I didn't care about her, and she felt like she wasn't attracted to me. She wanted adventure and to do something great with her life. Notice I say felt, because these feelings would soon start changing and she would realize that her feelings were clouded. The affair itself lasted for a couple months. She had dated the OM briefly before dating me, and they had remained in occasional contact throughout our marriage. They were only together twice, but had been spending lots of time together in their mutually shared activities. From what I understand, they went on a couple of dates during that time span. My wife didn't really work a job, though she did have several sources of side work. Most weeknights she would either be teaching dance classes, gymnastics, or doing an activity like rock climbing. I work full-time, take some side jobs, and go to school full-time. I was taking 18 hours. This was obviously not an ideal scenario. The OM would see her regularly at some of these activities, which I did not know at the time, and eventually during the day while I was at work. In the first 2 weeks of our recovery, we started seeing a marriage counselor, and she voluntarily saw an individual counselor. We didn't tell any of her family, and only one couple of our close friends. Also, her sister was getting married the week after I found out, so we were trying to keep it quiet for her family's sake. We spent lots of time together over this time, and she made vague commitments to try to make our marriage work and not to contact the OM. She did contact the OM and even saw him in person once or twice and somewhat tried to hide this from me. Things came to a head one day at lunch when she told me she needed separation. This really upset me because we had agreed to stay together and work it out. I told her if she needed space, I would give it to her, but we were going to talk to her parents first. Which we did, right then. Talking to her parents helped. She decided that she was going to stay in the marriage, though she didn't really want to. Or want me. The next day, when she got home from work, the OM was waiting at my house for her. I found out because I saw she was sitting at a park close to my house, through GPS tracking, for a long time. I called her and she didn't answer. When she called back, I played it cool, and she didn't say anything. I asked her directly, "So you were at the park by yourself?" She broke down, started crying, saying she didn't know what to do, etc. I told her I was very angry, and when I got home, I was the angriest with her that I was in the whole process. I told her I couldn't believe she lied to me again, a day after making the decision to stay with me. I felt stupid for trusting her, and felt like I should kick her out. But I put the ball in her court. I told her to make a decision, me forever or not. She cried and told me she wanted another chance. I decided to give her another chance, though I knew it was illogical and foolish. But that's love, right? She asked me if I wanted her to call the OM and break up with him right then, and I told her to do so if she felt it. She called and prefaced the conversation by saying my name is here, which of course made the rest of what she said useless. I may have also lost my temper and grabbed the phone and threatened the OM on the condition of him coming to my house again. The next day she called me while I was at work to ask if she could call the OM and explain what was going on. I obliged, because in reality, I didn't have a choice. It is much better to come off confident than to try to control, especially because controlling doesn't actually work. I don't know exactly what was said, but it was a long conversation, 80 minutes. According to my wife, she basically told the OM how she felt, which I'm sure included that she still loved him, and that she had made a decision to work on our marriage. Later that day, I got a text message from the OM telling me we needed to meet. I obliged because, again, I didn't really have a choice. This guy knows where I live, so if he wanted to hurt me, he could do so. He also told me that he wanted my wife to be there. I let her decide if she wanted to come or not. She decided to come. We met outside a Starbucks. I got there first, picked a table outside, and arranged the seating so that my wife would have to sit next to me and the OM would have to sit on the other side of the table. I also had my friend come and watch the conversation from his car, because I wasn't sure exactly what was going to happen. I went straight from work, so my wife had to meet us there. The OM showed up, and a little later my wife showed up. The OM told me he didn't want to fight me, and that trying anything would be stupid. He waited to really get into the discussion until my wife showed up. Once she did, he started with a good 5+ minute prepared, written speech on our marriage and relationship. When he was done, I said, "You've just read us a very carefully crafted lie. Like any good lie, there is some truth in what you said, but it is still a lie." We then proceeded to talk about some of the things he had brought up. My attitude throughout the discussion was mostly to force my wife to make the decisions. I told her several times that I wasn't holding her to our marriage, and that she could leave if she wanted. I could talk a lot about this meeting because it was really upsetting. But the important part is that my wife left with me. After that, things settled down a bit. If I remember correctly, for the next week she didn't see or talk to the OM. They were still friends on Facebook and Instagram. But from what I could tell from spying and directly asking, she didn't directly contact him at all. She even ignored several text messages from him. At the end of that week, we had a trip to Miami planned for a small gig she had. We made it into a small vacation and genuinely had a good time together. At one point during our drive to Miami, she mentioned separation again. She said she felt like she needed separation to figure out what she wanted, find herself, etc. I told her I didn't want her to feel that way anymore and didn't want to have to talk about it again. I told her if she was determined to work on our marriage, then that wasn't appropriate. Separation allows individuals to work on themselves individually, and we needed to work on ourselves in the context of being together. I told her as we went through this process that everything in our lives was flexible. Everything could change except for our belief in God, our commitment to our child, and our commitment to each other. This seemed to go over decently, and she verbally agreed with me. We got back late Saturday night from the trip, and everything was going well. However, the next morning things hit another low. When we woke up, we were just lying in bed together and started talking about everything. She ended up telling me again that she felt like she needed separation. At this point, I had no choice. I simply told her okay. This seemed to shock her. Over the next couple of hours, we talked a little more about it, and I basically told her that I believed the old adage, if you love something, set it free. I felt like it was time for me to let her go because I loved her. This was said amidst tears and long pauses, but that was the general message. I also told her that part of me letting go was moving on with my life. That when I let go of her, I was also letting go of my commitment to her. Letting go of that marital love that was keeping me going in this fight for her. We decided to go to church together that morning and postpone a final decision until we talked about it just a little more. Once at church, we both broke down, crying separately in different parts of the church. We didn't talk to each other, didn't sit next to each other. No contact. Incidentally, the message that morning was about the bond of a marriage covenant and its importance to God. She had a photo shoot that afternoon and told me we would talk after she got back. So I went to my brother's-in-law house and waited. Around 6 p.m. her sister showed up at the house too. Her sister was the photographer. So obviously the photo shoot was over. This sister also knew about the affair because my wife had told her. Her sister told me that my wife had gone to Starbucks to talk to her mom and that my wife was going to call one of us to come pick her up after she was done talking. 2 hours passed and no call from my wife. Her sister called, no answer. I texted and called, no answer. At this point I began to get both suspicious and worried. Her sister called Starbucks to see if she was still there, and she wasn't. So, being that she was in downtown and had no transportation, she either decided to walk home or met the OMI, being stupid, thought she tried to walk home and started driving through downtown to find her. I couldn't find her, so I went home to make sure she wasn't there. Of course, she wasn't. I checked her phone records and discovered several calls to the OM from that night. At this point, I was furious. I let her parents know what had happened and that I fully planned on kicking her out if she came home, which they agreed with. Hours passed as I waited for her to get home, both worried about her, as I wasn't 100% sure she was with him, and furious, because I was pretty sure she was. It was actually kind of hilarious, sitting there, waiting to see her so I could kick her out. She came home at around 11:30 p.m. and seemed somber and sincere. She told me she was sorry for not coming home and told me she was sorry for everything. She told me she knew she didn't deserve my love or another chance, but that was what she wanted. She told me she had taken that evening to just sort herself out a little. She didn't want to come home until she felt good about her decision to stay with me and felt like it was what she wanted. She told me she loved me and was going to do whatever it took to make our marriage work and earn my love. So, despite my anger, lack of trust, and obvious illogical nature of the evening, I accepted her back. There were some obvious flaws in her story. I know she spent a good bit of that night with the OM, but her attitude seemed genuinely different. I think that when I let her go, she realized what she was losing and didn't want that. She had the opportunity to leave with the OM that night, and I'm sure he tried to convince her, but she chose to stay because that's what she really wanted. After that night, things were notably better. She still had moments of sadness, and things are still uncomfortable, but the foundation, our commitment to each other seemed strong. Thanksgiving morning, she received a text from the OM. Sadly, she deleted it and didn't mention it to me. I confronted her and she gave me some lame reason, but I told her I was really upset about it. She said she was really sorry and blocked the OM from her phone and her social media pages. The rest of Thanksgiving was really awkward, but also pretty fun. The day after Thanksgiving we went to a rock climbing gym, and I was pretty sure the OM was going to be there. He was. She stayed really close to me, hung on me, kissed me, and generally made a point to be mine. She told me how much she appreciated me going, and really liked doing stuff like that with me. The next week, on Tuesday the OM called her from an unblocked line and they talked for about an hour. She told me about it on her own, though she knows I checked the phone records and said it was basically the same conversation they had before. He was checking in to see if she had changed her mind and told her that he still loved her, etc. I told her that I was really upset she talked to him that long. We talked for a while and she gave me some self-pity type comments. It ended with her realizing she was being ungrateful for what she had and self-centered. Things were tense after that, but I think it was a healthy conversation. I'm sure the OM will call again and we'll see how she handles it. That is pretty much it. We're up to date now. Things are still really hard but seem to be going in the right direction. I believe her when she says she is committed to me and tells me she loves me. I think she is beginning to understand what love is and figure herself out. I've learned a lot about myself in this process as well. I felt so helpless and powerless when I found out, but now I feel like I will be happy regardless of the outcome. Though I really want to make it work. I'll be posting more and updating my story as it continues. Perhaps I'll even go through and clean it up a little. My hope is that this can provide someone with hope that is going through a similar situation. I know I am not out of the woods yet, but I really feel like things are going to work out. Comments. Dude, I am a Christian too and your story kind of makes me sick. If this story is real, you are a doormat. She is a cake-eating W. She got banged by OM a hell of a lot more than 2 times. You are doing everything wrong, but at least you're happy about it. I don't think I am going to give you any advice, because you are a happy plan B even if you don't want to be a doormat. Your actions and lack of actions make you one. Your wife has walked all over you with no repercussions. Your title talks about a hopeful chance of success. Not sure where you're getting that idea from, but you couldn't be more wrong. The OM met with you and read you an entire speech about how messed up your marriage is. And you had no choice but to meet him and listen to it, and partially agree to some of it. And you have no choice but to make ultimatums to your wife while alternately begging her to return to you. I think not. I think you need to read about how to do what is called the 180, which basically means stop asking her to choose between you and someone else, and stop calling her family to complain about her, and stop issuing worthless ultimatums, and stop expecting her to suddenly realize the error of her ways and come running back into your arm after ditching the OM forever. Because based on what you have written here, and based on how you've handled the situation to date, it isn't going to happen. Even if she does drop the affair, your actions have not earned you any respect, and if she doesn't respect you, if she has no consequences for her actions, she'll never really come back. Which of course means she'll probably do it again. With this guy or someone else. OP responds, "Wow, I appreciate all the candid and blunt replies. You must understand that I'm not blind to the criticisms of my actions here. I am simply choosing to trust her again, because I believe that the person I married is still in there. A person that wants to do what is right. I think perhaps my biggest concern of things mentioned so far is that she may no longer respect me. That is something that will take time to discover. I get where you are coming from, and I did read about the 180 and thought about following that advice. I however thought it was more appropriate to strike a balance between being strict and being there for her. I know I've given her 3 or 4 second chances now, but the only reason that I haven't done the 180 is because each time she came back more committed than the last. I know it seems foolish, and maybe is foolish, but I don't think I could have lived with myself if I had kicked her out when she came back apologetic. As far as respecting me, I am concerned about that. Obviously, popular opinion on this channel seems to disagree, but I think what I have done so far is respectful. And I am hoping she sees it that way too. I do feel stupid for giving her so many chances, but it seemed like the right thing to do for my situation. I am being a doormat to an extent. You're right, but I will only take so much. I've told her that if she sees him or calls him again, that I will be done. The day that I told her I was letting her go, I had gotten to that point. It was only because she came back with a different attitude that we are still together. Not sure what a hyper beta is, honestly. I hope our relationship is successful too. I think any relationship going through an affair has very long odds. I think my actions so far have been the right ones for my situation. At the minimum, they are the ones I can live with. She isn't still screwing the OM. I am sure of that because I track her with a GPS. She also calls, texts frequently to check in with me. Further, I didn't mean I couldn't live with myself if I kicked her out. I meant that I couldn't live with myself if I did that before I felt it was the right time. I didn't and don't think that kicked her out when she was apologetic was appropriate. This is a true story, and I do appreciate the feedback. It is hard for me to hear a bunch of people who are very educated on the subject telling me I've handled this poorly. But I am open to criticism and hope to learn from what people have to say. I'm not going to say that I'm going to change my actions, but I am listening and evaluating what is being said. Comments. I think you're too close to your own situation to see clearly. You need to be 50 feet up in the air so that you can get a better overall picture. Easier said than done, I know. Back yourself off. Try to detach. You must try. You either pay a small price now, and if you don't detach, you will pay a much higher price later. You're 25, for goodness sake. Stop ruining your future now. An unfaithful wife is one of the cruelest burdens you're choosing to carry for yourself. Who are you doing it for? No woman respects a man who can't respect himself. If you want to do something for your child, show them that your wife's actions aren't tolerated in a healthy, normal relationship, and people shouldn't allow others to treat them like they're nothing more than a piece of meat. Better yet, don't excuse your weak and pathetic actions by playing the martyr and saying you're doing it for the good of your child. OP responds, I appreciate the candor, but I hardly think what I've done is weak and pathetic. It would be far easier to say it's over. Comments. I might be one of the few who view your situation a little differently, as it seems to so closely resemble my story in many ways. Getting caught, recommitting to the marriage. Then she struggles to avoid the OM and reconnects with him until she is caught again. Then the cycle repeated. It's a horrible roller coaster, I know, and your wife is in the fog so she can't completely see it all either. A few thoughts I'll share. Remember that for her, she feels that her love for him is genuine and was able to rewrite history regarding her feelings for you, because her feelings for you weren't as exciting, fresh, or fun as they were for him at this time. Nonetheless, while she may have made a logical, well-thought-out decision to commit to the marriage, there are and will continue to be moments where every fiber of her being is screaming to go find the OM. It's not unlike a drug, which provides very real, very physical rushes, because every time she was with him or anxious to see him or saw his name pop up on her phone, she would feel that rush of excitement as the endorphins flowed freely. Now that is all gone, and, in its place, she now mostly feels shame, guilt, humiliation, etc. I'm sure there are moments where she cries quietly alone, or at least longs to see him again, and might still actually do so in a weak moment. It is extremely painful to know and watch your wife feel that way, knowing that she is longing for another man. I know for me it was somewhat gut-wrenching to be lying in bed at night and hear her in the next room over crying silently because she missed the OM. And while I had every right to be angry about that, I really couldn't blame her for it either. She was suffering by her actions alone, and that was one of the consequences. In addition to the emotion, she sorts of trained herself to seek him. Think about it, for months anytime she wanted to get that emotional high, all she had to do was go text, call, or visit him. It became a habit, and one that is especially hard to break. If you can bear it, you might even let her know that you understand that she is probably struggling with this. Next, she absolutely does need to be held responsible for her actions. She does need to continue therapy. She needs to have NC with the OM. She needs to heal herself as well. There really can't be any mistakes anymore. I don't agree with many here that you are incapable of holding on to her respect by having given her as many chances as you have. But only if you are firm with your expectations with her and show her that you won't accept this behavior again. I think you did show her that you were willing to let her go, and ready to do so. But at this point I think you have probably exhausted that second chance tree. I appreciate you sharing your story, and hope you will continue. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I am going to. I can't count how many things you did wrong. So instead, I'll tell you some of the things I did. You can see how the results I got differ from what you got. First off, my wife told me about the affair. I left the house like you did, but I used too much steroids and told her we were divorcing. Granted, the affair itself was over, but she was devastated. And she wasn't going back to the OM. She was terrified about what was happening to the marriage. Because I told her we were divorcing. When I went back home, I wanted to divorce. She acted like a wife, but she wasn't my wife. Cooking for me when I wouldn't eat. Wanting to sleep with me when I would refuse. It drove her mad. The only time I saw the OM, ended with me spending the first part of the day in the hospital, and the rest of the day in jail. He didn't contact my wife for a long time after that. I also filed for divorce, and my wife got served the papers while I was in the house. And she say, well, that's it, I give up. She decided to show me why I should give her a second chance. Because she knew she only had 60 days from that point to get me to change my mind. And she did. I eventually called off the divorce and attempted to reconcile, and it was destroyed when I saw a little email she didn't tell me about. It wasn't replied to or anything, just from the OM. I was divorced before she could even say she was sorry. What's the difference between you and me? It isn't that I didn't love. I loved my ex-W and didn't want to divorce her. Hell, some on this forum may argue that I still do love her. The difference is I was able to tell her this marriage is dead, and it is up to her to revive it. I am not going to do it for her. So far, you have been the one having to do all the saving. That is the problem. The BS should never have to save the marriage. They should make an ultimatum and divorce if it isn't met. It is up to the WS to save the marriage, not the BS, not you. Understand? OP responds. She has blocked the OM from all points of contact and has given me complete access to all of her means of communication. There does need to be an NC letter. I will have us work on that early this week. She has been exposed to all of her family and several of our close friends. From what I can tell, she is being transparent. She does let me know where she is when she is apart from me, and it can normally be verified through other means. She no longer has contact with any male friends. She does seem remorseful and contrite, however. She isn't spending as much energy trying to rebuild our marriage as I would like. She is willing to discuss the details of the in fact we did last night for quite a while. Additionally, she knows she is the problem, and has told me many times. She knows her unhappiness was due to something broken in her, not due to our marriage. She is actively working on figuring that part of herself out. These are the reasons why I think things are going in the right direction. I am listening to the opinions on this thread, and if she has contact with him again, I will take action. Additionally, I will keep updating this thread as our journey continues, regardless of the outcome. All of the feelings she had that night can be attributed to her being in the fog. She was trying to convince herself of those things to justify, rationalize her affair. When we talk now, she no longer feels the same way. I wouldn't go as far as to say she has no feelings for the OM or that she is fully in love with me. But it's a lot closer than it was 6 weeks ago. I fully believe she loved me when we were dating, when we got married, and for most of our marriage. I don't fully understand why she fell out of love with me, but I think it has to do with her being insecure and looking for a source that made her feel valuable. Additionally, she wants adventure, and I haven't been providing that. Lastly, I think she is going through a sort of life crisis, questioning everything and feeling lost. She is to secure in our marriage my love for her to feel like she needs to fight for me. I'm not entirely sure how to create this dynamic short of doing the 180. I will not do the 180 unless she breaks her word to me from this point on. I will have her do an NC letter this week, probably today. So, do you have advice on how to foster that dynamic where I'm at right now? Unfortunately, I do think there is some truth in the opinion of people saying I'm a beta, not to the extreme that some are painting. But I do think if I was more assertive, confident, and maybe even more selfish to a degree, it would help create that dynamic. She has told me that she wants to pursue me, but I'm not sure how to create that dynamic now. In a healthy marriage, advice on this would be very appreciated. I will also say, I think a negative part of our relationship before the was that she felt like she needed me instead of wanted me. But whatever, what I was saying is that she is insecure in herself, that she was seeking a sense of value through the attention of guys. I do think it's important for us to be pals by doing activities together, as this is an easy way to fall in love with someone. That is how she fell in love with me originally, and how she fell in love with the OM. My comment. OP, at this point I'm not sure what advice you're seeking other than validation from others here on your approach. Doubtful. If that's what you want, I wish you luck. I still root for your success, but I struggle to see the path that will take you there. I just prayed for you. Only God himself can save you from you. I pray you are right. I think you are delusional. 5 weeks is nothing. 6 months it is the first real milestone. OM called you and your wife and explained to you how wrong your marriage to you and your wife is. You stood there hearing it and you think that you did everything right. Your wife will go back to OM when she feels the dust is settled. She will duck him. You will find out again and again, but you will do nothing other than giving her chances after chances. One more thing, she will never leave you forever, because it's too hard to find a man like you. What you guys think about this doormat story? Where did this go wrong? Comment down below, sub and bell, and check out the other stories.